Welcome to Gamer Retail Ramblings. I'm your host, Travis Severance. This is episode 18. We're going to be talking about merchandising today, coming to you live from Millennium Games Studios in very sunny, very thick, very humid, tropical Rochester, New York today, which we're in the AC space that is the streaming studio, so it's happier than the sweatshop that is my office right now. It's great to be back to talk to everybody. It's been a while.
Since I could.
So I was doing some traveling. I was in Baltimore at Games and Stuff for their Vault Tour that Ghost Galaxy hosted over the weekend. And before that, I had some other personal travel that I was doing. So here we are 3 weeks forward, and we're going to be talking about merchandising today. Merchandising is super important to me. It's something that we really put a lot of thought into when we moved into this space. We went from, as some of you know, we went from about an 11,000 square foot space to this 28,000 square foot monstrosity that I have now. And going into that process was a whole lot of thought behind how we were going to do displays, what we were going to do for our counters, what we wanted to put into our play space, which we're not going to get into play space today. We sort of talked about that casually before, and I may do that in another episode, but today is just going to be about merchandising and merchandising in general and how we approach it, what sort of strategy we put behind it, and making the store be as presentable as possible. So in simplest terms, what exactly is merchandising? Well, merchandising is a practice of promoting sales of products by presenting them in retail environments in the most appealing way possible. It's about making your store look inviting, ensuring that the products are easy to find, and ultimately encouraging customers to make a purchase on those products. So in the simplest ways, it's how clean can you be, how much of a presentation can you have, how effective is your signage, and so on and so forth. Merchandising is super important for us as game store owners because of the people that we cater to. We have a pretty wide swath of customers. You know, we've got families that come in here, we've got hardcore gamers, we've got people that are casual players, and we also have collectors that come in that are looking for very specific things. So our product line, or my product line specifically, ends up being pretty wide and pretty varied to sort of meet the needs of all those different customers that come in. Other stores, other retail operations don't necessarily have as wide of a swath of customer coming in. You know, there's the place that I go and buy my jeans for. There's not like there's hardcore jean collectors that are in there and a casual mom shopping to get her, you know, latest casual pair of jeans, right? Like that's not what they deal with in other retail outlets. So it's sort of specific and unique to us in that way because of the variety of different products that we sell. Effective merchandising is going to help to cater to those groups of people so that they can find basically their stuff and be able to get out of the store in an effective way and be happy with what their shopping experience was. So you got to highlight those products, and you have to create a welcoming environment so that the people that come in, regardless of which of those sections that they're from, enjoy their shopping experience. They find the goods that they need, and they're able to navigate your store in a way where they can go to the departments that they need to go to and figure out where the stuff is that they're looking for to buy as quickly as possible. So I'm going to break this down into a couple of key areas. So here's essentially just 7 different categories that we use to break down and approach effective merchandising in our store. And number 1 is store layout. When you look at store layout, you want to think about store layout as a roadmap for your customers. It should guide them through your store in a way that's simple and effective, and they shouldn't feel like they're claustrophobic or that the spaces are too tight. So making sure your measurements on your displays are set up in a way where you've got 36 or 40 inches in between space so that people aren't constantly rubbing against each other, and also so that they can effectively be able to get strollers through. Now, if you're a store that's less focused on families and less focused on kids, it's not something that's super paramount for you, but during the holidays, you'll probably still get inundated with some strollers if your store is positioned in a way to capture that audience. Well planned out layout has a nice foot flow for traffic, strategically placed high demand products. So you want the stuff that people are going to buy more of, presented in a way where they can find those things, they can see why it's a big deal. You've got effective lighting and things like that set up there. So when you look at your layout, consider it just as a loop. Grocery stores are a perfect example of how those things are shopped and set up that way. You're going to go on a loop pattern in your grocery store, and typically your fresh foods and your bakery is to the right as you go in, because most shoppers naturally, because they're right-handed, tend to go to the right. So everything goes to the right, and then you flow your way through in your left-hand side, and when you get around the loop, you're at your cash out, and then you go out the door the other way. So a loop setup is fairly standard, fairly common. It's what we've done. The difference is we have a center cashier station where we manage things, because the left-hand side of our store is set up for a loop to go in one direction, and the right-hand side of our store is set up to loop another section. It's set up more as a clover, but I did that basically because of the way that the store itself is broken into different categories based on exactly those customer types that I talked about. So I've got a family section where the loop goes to the left rather than the right. The right-hand section is more for hardcore gamers and casuals. and some collectors as well. And then the TCGs are in the back as well as the event space. So there's loops, but there's loops built into it all the way around the central cash register stations that we have. So typically, you're just set up like an oval or, I'll use an oblate spheroid, so more of a football shaped shopping experience, right? Some of the things that we take a look at and we consider when we're doing that is essentially this idea called bubble wrap. If you have aisles and things like that where you're shopping and you have end caps, you want the end caps typically to speak to what the experience is going to be for the shopper down those aisles. So our end caps are set up in a way where they're very specifically going to tell you, if you enter this aisle, products that you're going to see are typical to what these end caps are. Now, there are occasions when we have featured items or things like that where it bucks that trend, but all the time where we have signage that's specifically going to call out the categories for our different departments that we have, that's going to tell the shopper, when you go down this aisle, this is what you see. The end caps are going to kind of set the tone for the products that they're going to get used to experiencing on that side. And they typically tend to be something that's either newer or something that's a high volume turning thing, because I want it to be shopping. I want it to be something that they're going to look at with the idea of, this is new or effective, or why would I be here? So the high volume stuff is typically set up more with the casual gamer in mind, in that we want to be able to show them products that they're going to enjoy and they're going to be able to understand and get into in a quick way without a ton of learning or teaching. The other thing about it too is, if your end cap's a bunch of complex games, it doesn't effectively allow it to be sold as easily. When I have employees that are working in those aisles, it's a lot easier if it's a 3 to 5 minute pitch at most on that, as opposed to like trying to do War of the Ring on an end cap, which you can do, but it's a lot trickier. Sale area too is an area where we have 24/7. We've always got a sale area. We do our best to make sure this sale area itself is merchandised in a way that's effective. If your sale area looks like a bunch of junk, it's going to sell like a bunch of junk. So the better your sale area looks, the more likely you are to sell those discount items. Now, that doesn't mean that we spend more time in our sale area making sure that it's hyper merchandised, but we certainly go over there and try to effectively clean it up on a daily basis as best we can, because retail is a contact sport. They touch our products, we sell our products to them, and they mess around and play with things all the time. The other thing too that you want to be conscious of when you're talking about store layout is dead displays. What I mean by that is, if you've got a cardboard Rubik's Cube display that used to hold 25 Rubik's Cubes on it and it now holds one and it's dangling and it looks like crap and it's cardboard there, like, just throw it out. The same thing goes for anything else that you're carrying that has some kind of a display but it's empty. Now look, I know a lot of us out there have Games Workshop paint displays that are empty, and it's not through our own fault, but it's their inability to be able to stock and stuff. But if you have things that are pop displays that came in for a little while, that are a cardboard thing that came from Hasbro or Spin Master or any of those places, and they are well past their use, just throw them out. If you've got dice displays or you've got paint displays, and the paint display is never something that you're going to intentionally fill, as a glue display or something like that, figure something else out. It's an eyesore, it looks like garbage, it looks like you're not paying attention to what your store is. Just move along with it and throw the thing out and call it a day with that line. I see that stuff in toy stores a lot. I see it in other retail stores that I walk into. It's very clear that you don't care about this line. And if you're at the point where the display itself is collecting dust and there's nothing on there that's going to be effectively sold, just put it on discount and move it out. Move on with your life. It'll look a lot better. Number 2 is product placement. This involves deciding where each product should be displayed within your store. High traffic areas should feature new arrivals and bestsellers. We tend to do that as much as we can. We want to highlight the things. It's so much easier to sell more copies of something that I'm going to sell 50 of than it is to try to sell additional copies of something that I'm going to sell 1 to 2 of. Our eye level stuff, the things that customers are going to see and going to be able to recognize the most, are our highest volume sellers. It's set up intentionally that way. If you take a look at other retailers that are bigger national chain retailers, or you take a look at grocery stores and things like that, they have the ability to charge producers more money to be at eye level in their store. We don't end up having those things because I don't have 100 different Wegmans locations or 1,000 different Walmarts or things like that. But in other areas of retail, they charge specifically for that space. Well, if I don't have an eye as a retailer to look at those shelf spaces as the same thing, I'm just missing an opportunity. If I'm putting a bunch of crap up there on those eye level spaces that should be premium priced, I'm just losing my ability to be able to sell more of the things that I already know that they're going to sell. That's not to say that we don't try some things out. That's not to say that we don't occasionally adjust some shelves specifically because we've got a theme. We've got cats on the left-hand side and we've got birds on the right-hand side, and it's kind of just the theme that we're doing. Okay, that's cool, but by and large, though, the most effective sellers should be in the most effective spaces to be sold in. I hope that makes sense from a logistics standpoint, and from a placement standpoint, and from an effectiveness standpoint. Like, you're trying to sell more things, you want to make sure that the sight lines are things that people will see, that you have a higher percentage of them enjoying and selling. So as things kind of fall by the wayside and their popularity goes down, they move further down our shelves, or in some cases where we have stuff that goes up to the ceiling, then they'll continue to be up higher, that sort of thing. The other thing you want to think about with product placement is impulse buys. Impulse buys are super important in the toy side of things. They're very important for us too. We have our cash registers are wrapped with all kinds of $20 or less items that are not only there as impulse buys specifically for somebody that's like, oh, I wasn't thinking about grabbing this thing, but I'll grab it here, but they're also solutions as well. So we have glue and sleeves and that sort of stuff that's close to the registers as well, because there's a lot of times when somebody brings up a model kit for something and they're going to buy it, and one of the cashiers says, hey, do you have glue at home? And they think to themselves they don't. Well, it would have been awful if they bought that $50 40K kit or whatever, and they got home and they realized they couldn't put the thing together, and now they got to make a separate trip out to spend $6 or $7 on some glue. So one of the things about your counter space and your product placement there is you want to think about the things that are going to be effective for them on the way out the door, and that can also be helpful for their purchases that they're making as they bring those to the register. Sleeves is another thing for board games, that sort of thing. So think about that when you're placing those products in your store and where you want them. You can put them near your board games as well. So we have the luxury of space, so we do both places. We have the end caps of our board game aisle has a nice sleeve section there, and then the more popular selling sleeves we also have towards the front of the counter. It serves roles in both spaces when you do it that way. Visual displays. This is where you can get super creative. Thematic displays can be a fantastic way to draw attention to certain products. Holidays are really obvious. Like, we go out of our way to try to make sure that we have displays set up specifically focused on whatever the holidays are, and we sort of do our own thing the best we can. So we always have a wonderful Valentine's Day 2-player section, and then right next to it we have a solo play section, because not everybody has somebody to celebrate Valentine's Day with. So the solo section gets its own display as well, so you can play games by yourself if you don't have somebody that you're buying chocolate or flowers for. The other thing that you want to think about as well is geekdom in general. So we have, one holiday of the year that's upon us, which is the Free RPG Day that's coming up this weekend behind me, but there's a whole bunch of other holidays that are baked in based on what Hollywood does for us. So when there's movies that are coming out that have specifically have products designed for them before the actual movie comes out, or the TV show or something like that, we do our best to try to effectively merchandise those about 30 days out before the show gets popular, and then we run it till about 2 weeks afterwards, and then we rotate those out. So as an example, we've got a display that's more of a fandom display that's set up. It had piles of Dune merchandise on it that we sold before the Dune movie came out, and then when the Dune movie came out and it hit, we sold the stuff down on there. That got put back, and then the next thing we had was a set of Fallout stuff that ended up coming out. So the Fallout stuff got put out there, and then when the Acolyte came out, we moved it around and we made a Star Wars display out of that. It's the same thing. You can have Father's Day stuff. You can look at the things that are coming out. I mean, there's a Borderlands thing coming out. Not that we have a ton of effective games for Borderlands or books or anything like that, but the stuff that you do have, it's going to be top of mind because there's a whole bunch of money that they're spending on marketing to make those things top of mind. Stranger Things season's coming out as well in a little bit. We've got a bunch of Stranger Things products that we can do, and sometimes it's not necessarily just the branded stuff, but there's some unbranded stuff that's Stranger Things-esque in the horror role-playing section and that sort of thing. Kids on Bikes that Renegade does, and a handful of other products that are in line with what that fan base is looking for as far as an experience goes. Setting up a display for that is going to be effective for you. So when we talk about visual displays, that's something that you want to keep in mind. But again, you want to keep it fresh and you want to keep them rotating. There's constantly something new coming out in that world that you might as well take the coattails of all the marketing spend on that and be able to take advantage of it with the products that we have in a store. Sometimes that's puzzles, Monopoly boards, whatever it ends up being. Like, you have to do a little bit of your homework there, because product ordering means that you order before everybody realizes it's coming, not afterwards, because as soon as you go to try to order it when Fallout is a big giant hit, all of a sudden Asmodee doesn't have any in, Modiphius is out of it, and there's none available for you to get. So you have to have an eye towards the calendar of geekdom ahead of time. So do yourself a favor and grab yourself for $12 a digital subscription to Entertainment Weekly, and that'll keep you on pace with what that goes. But I mean, I have show releases set on my stupid phone as a calendar to keep myself honest about when things are coming out, so that I know 60 days out I can effectively buy those items. Signage and information is the next category. Clear professional signage is going to help guide the customers and provides them with valuable information. One of the things that you want to talk about is you want to use signs to highlight different sections of your store so that they know that they're going in the area that they need to go in. So if you take a look around our store, for the most part, it's sort of set up the way that an airport is set up. And if you don't know where you are in an airport, you typically just need to look up. It's the same thing in our store. If you look at the periphery on the outside of our store, It's going to give you very in-your-face signage that's going to tell you what departments are where. Those are general signs. They're not specific signs. So it's miniatures or role-playing. It's not Dungeons and Dragons or Pathfinder, that sort of thing. You can use shelf talkers as well for signage. Just be careful about that stuff. A lot of times I can figure out whether a store is a high volume store or a low volume store based on how many shelf talkers and how many little placards and how many little write-ups there are. Like, if I walk into a store and there's more signs and more little things displayed than there are products, that means the person that's working there has a whole bunch of time. Like, I don't need a story for every 2-player game or every card game that you have about how you, oh, I played this during a picnic one time out in the... No. The shelf talkers get in the way a lot of times. Make sure that they're effective and make sure they communicate to the customer exactly what you're looking to do. But I mean, I walk into some of these retail stores and whether I don't need to know what the goat looks like that you made that soap from, right? I just want to know, is it effective? Is it going to make my skin soft? Let's move on with ourselves. The other thing too that you want to think about is when your signage, is your signage revenue generating? Or is it solution based? And what I mean by that is if you have customers that come in every single day and ask the same question 12 different times, and that happens every single day, wherever they're asking that question from, there's probably a way where you can put a sign in place that helps them with that. So if I have customers that walk in every day, and the dozens, and they say, where is your bathroom? I need to have more effective signs for my bathroom. Now that may mean that I don't need something just above where the bathroom is. I may need something in another area. So look at where those people are when they're asking those questions and think about putting a signage there. Now, if it's a revenue generating question, like, hey, would you tell me about X or Y? You don't necessarily want a sign there if you have humans that are there that can interface for that. So take a look and decide which one of these is gonna reduce the redundancy of solution-based signage that isn't necessarily revenue generating. Where is your soda? Well, my soda is over there. But you want a display that says drinks and refreshments. You want a sign that says something like that. You want different signs to be effective. And the most effective signs are the signs that are positioned in a way where where a customer will stand for a length of time. So the area around your register is a good place to advertise what your events are, that sort of thing, because people can just take a flyer, they can grab that while they're waiting in line. That's a good place to advertise new releases or new events that are coming or things like that where they're going to be standing for a period of time. Or if a customer's standing somewhere and they ask themselves a question, utilize that as feedback for you to decide where you want to put a sign up. Again, you can go overboard with the signage as well. Like I talked about, like every time I walk into a store and I see all these little table tents and there's 50 staff pick things and things like that. Like if those shelf talkers are in the way where every time I'm grabbing the game behind the shelf talker, I'm bending the shelf talker is getting ripped, it's gonna suck in like 3 weeks. So like think about how you're positioning that shelf talker, make sure that it's effective for that. Staff picks are cool. I don't need a novel for why so-and-so likes it. If so-and-so cares about you as a staff member at the store and they know your taste and they see that you made a staff pick for such and such, they can ask you, why do you like this thing? You don't have to write out a novel on the shelf talker about why you like this thing. Just put a sticker on. This is your name. Boom. Staff pick. Move on with your life. I think we're on number 5 because I've got a couple after this. So lighting, another crucial aspect of effective merchandising. Good lighting is going to make the difference between how welcome people feel coming to your store or not. So if you have ineffective lighting or it's not bright enough in the store, things like that, families are less likely to approach. So make sure that you think about that as far as the softness, the brightness, all of that stuff. Ambient light combined with just generally comfortable atmospheres are going to increase the amount of people that are going to want to shop in your space. Natural light is great if you have windows. Just be conscious of the fact that if your natural lighting is killing the face of your product, you need to rotate that so that the sun doesn't damage those. Number 6 is interactive elements. What I mean by that is, again, we are selling games for the most part. People like to touch and feel and taste those games. Having demo tables set up and having them out for people to be able to try those things or for you to be able to explain, more challenging or higher concept games to them is fantastic. We have some please touch signs because we want you to touch our plush and like mess around with it and make sure that it's something cool that you like. When customers can come in and play and they can experience a little bit of the product, it's a good thing. The likelihood of you selling more products goes up. We have 4 demo tables that are set up and we have a handful of different tables that are set up that are just made specifically as display tables because maybe the box doesn't do a great job of selling the game and somebody opens that box up and they can see it they see the pieces inside, they'll understand, oh, this is why this game is $60 or $70, because the models in it are fantastic, the card quality is really good. So occasionally, if a box isn't doing a great job of selling a game for us that we think could do better if it's wide open, we have some smaller tables set up with copies of the game underneath it that are out there that are just effectively display tables that tell you a little bit more about what's inside the box rather than having to tear it open yourself, and people enjoy that. It also gives the people in your aisles that are working for you something to have a conversation with them about. If they don't know what they're looking for, they can have a conversation about those games on the display table, or they can ask you questions about those as well. I've seen stores that have, this is a really interesting store that I was in, they have those baskets that you can carry around. And on the left-hand side are white baskets, and on the right-hand side of this display are black baskets. And the white baskets essentially say, as a customer, please approach me and you can ask me questions about my shopping as I go. And the black baskets essentially say, leave me the hell alone, I just want to shop on my own, which are fantastic because if you need help or you need something like that, cool, you have a white basket, one of my employees will approach you, they will have a conversation with you. If you have a black basket, nobody's going to talk to you. Come to the register, do the thing. It's great for introverts and extroverts, so it's something that down the road we may implement. Right now we've just got purple baskets, so I just saw that when I was shopping recently, and I was like, that's exactly what I want. I'm a black basket shopper 100%. Even if I have questions, I still don't want to be approached with a question. So that's just me. And the last thing I have is customer feedback and adaptation. So you can ask customers what they think about your displays. Sometimes you'll know that a display is defective because you can look at how much stuff you're selling. Now, sometimes it doesn't matter if the display is good or not. You just have a pile of stuff and you're just going to sell it and it's going to be effective and you see a bunch of sales. But sometimes if you're changing up your displays enough and you're moving things around, you can tell when you've nailed it on a display and you've done a really good job with merchandising because people are seeing it that wouldn't normally see it, or it's collected in a way where it wouldn't normally be done. So like Dune was super popular for us. We had a ton of different Dune things that we were selling. I mean, we had generic Dune Monopoly from the op that we were selling. We had all the books and novels. We had the miniature game. We had the role-playing game. We had a whole bunch of different stuff like that. So it was very easy for us to see that we were getting a nice smattering of different things being bought from there. And it was clear that it was the popularity of the Dune movie that was sort of helping that along as well. Technology-based solutions are another thing that can be really effective for you. So if you have ways where you can integrate maybe your e-commerce store to the shopping experience as well. You know, sometimes there's ways where you can set up your store in a way where that e-commerce thing will talk back to the consumer as they're wandering around if they have questions. We're not quite there yet, but tech isn't that far behind. You know, we're still in the process of getting our website built out and stuff. We may end up having an app that'll allow people to be able to shop that around the store, and we'll see if we can get it connected to this CAD thing so they'll know roughly where it is on the shelf, which would be super cool. You want to pay attention to your sales data too. Sales data is going to be not super critical for you, but it's certainly going to be able to gauge whether or not that display worked well. And if you have something where you're doing this on a cyclical basis and you set up a St. Patrick's display and it just doesn't hit, or something was really effective, then give yourself a note so that when you circle back to that the following calendar year, can we do something a little bit different in that? Is there a way for us to figure out exactly what we need to do to make that a more effective thing? Or is it just something that we should just take off and we shouldn't spend any time or any effort on it at all? That's all for today for merchandising. As usual, I will do a 30-minute AMA after this. So if people have questions afterwards, I'm happy to jump in there and I'm happy to deal with the comments. If you found this episode helpful, please subscribe, do a comment, that sort of thing. Next time, we're going to be talking about navigating the challenges of online competition. So as a brick and mortar store, there's a fierce amount of competition for buying and selling that goes on with the online sphere. So next week, when we get together, we're going to talk specifically about how I handle that with our humble little brick and mortar store. Until then, happy gaming, everybody. Thanks.